Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I am your host, Ronnie Harder. Today, I am joined by, for now, Contown, and a little bit later on in the show, Matt will join us. So we'll go ahead and start with you, Contown. How are you?
Doing good. Coming off a win. I'm still a little sick, and I don't think the 7:30 kick at like a crisp 37 degrees for 3.5 hours helped. 4 hours with the Fox broadcast, but we're getting through it. Home stretch here and getting ready for another big weekend.
You went to the game?
Oh yeah, I haven't missed a home game this year. Got to the Wisconsin game, so
interesting.
Won't see the stadium again until the big one after Thanksgiving. But it's been a good year for when Contown's in the stands. Michigan is undefeated.
Yeah, are you going to any of the away games?
No, unfortunately, not making the trip to Happy Valley. I don't know if I'll ever. That's like a step below Ohio Stadium for me, in that I don't know if I can ever.
Why is that?
Build the courage. It's a big, intimidating environment. Obviously, they like to have Michigan at night, if possible.
That's true.
And I've just heard not great things about Penn State fans. Not the worst, but like I've heard terrible things about Ohio State fans at Ohio Stadium.
We know that.
But I've heard like maybe a notch below that about Penn State. So I might hit it one day, but I'll probably get to the rest of the Big Ten first.
Don't blame you. Yeah, that's on my bucket list, is to go to Happy Valley or Ohio Stadium. But you are right. The stories that I've heard about both fan bases aren't the greatest. So we'll see. Maybe one day.
Yeah.
So let's go back to this game this past Saturday. It was a 29-7 win from Michigan against Indiana. A lot of fans seem to be pretty upset with Michigan and how they performed on offense, which I get. Their red zone struggles have been there all season. But I thought, and we discussed this before the podcast, Contown, was the fact that Indiana still has a pretty good defense despite all their injuries. The pass rush isn't that great, but you saw on Saturday how great that their pass defense is. They're a well-coached team. Michael McFadden is probably the best linebacker that we'll face all year. Brandon Smith from Penn State, we'll see him this weekend. Probably is the second best. He might even have the case for the first best, but I think Michael McFadden is the best just because he's so technically sound, does everything right on the football field. Kind of go over what you saw from Michigan's offense, especially in the red zone from this past Saturday, Contown, and what are some things or some ways that Michigan can fix those issues?
So I think the thing you have to start with is anytime you make any kind of like assessment, especially in a team sport, it's like you start with the things you can control internally. This is another game we saw Michigan get a penalty in the red zone that I think actually, once assessed, pushed them out of the 20-yard line. At least one penalty in the red zone this week, a false start. And then just like missed assignments too. Missed blitz pickups. If you're going to drop back pass in the red zone, you have to have great protection. And Indiana was bringing a little bit of pressure this weekend. But you always want to start, the most, control the controllables. You start with the things that are internal and that you can actually control in the game flow. And that's just playing assignment sound and penalty free once you get into the red zone. The field condenses, which automatically gives a advantage to the defense. Same number of guys playing in a smaller space, so the defense is playing with a hand up, so to speak. So you don't want to give them any advantages by blowing assignments or penalizing yourself. Other than that, I do think, play calling wise, Michigan did some good things in the red zone this week.
I agree.
I think getting the tight end involved in Luke Schoonmaker, we didn't have Eric All, who is playing as, maybe the best tight end in the conference right now, but getting Schumacher involved was great, and it led to 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the one was set up by Hassan Haskins having a great game, and you get to throw the waggle out there, and the defense is obviously primary concern is the run game and Haskins. So, the run game set that up, but then the other Schumacher touchdown was just a simple little stick route, and beat his dude, walled off his guy and got into the end zone. So, get the tight ends involved in the red zone, especially once you get all back. They give you big targets. We've got skilled tight ends, so you can flex out from 12 personnel. The defense can have their personnel out there to stop the run, and you flex your tight ends out and get nice big targets for Cade to throw to. And then getting Cade on the move too, which was also something we saw with the waggle.
Play action.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, the waggle for those under the age of 68 is a play where it's basically a naked boot opposite of the running action, with receivers, including the tight end, flowing across the run action with the quarterback. No, the waggle's a great play. It's a staple of football. So I think in the play calling, we're starting to see some of the ways that Gaddis is going to try to scheme up to kind of fix the red zone woes. We saw JJ get extended time this week, although he made his own mistakes in the red zone. But I think it starts with what Michigan does, and that's not taking bad penalties in the red zone and not blowing assignments, especially on the offensive line. And then also just getting the tight ends involved. It'll be huge to get Eric All back this week against Penn State. And if we can execute our own assignments and Cade can find the tight ends, I think the red zone stuff should improve these last 3 games here.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the play, that last touchdown where Schoonmaker kind of ran that little out route towards the left.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really good play. I like the formation that they had where they kind of had him like in the flex or like the slot position. Yep. And then they had Cade in an empty backfield, and they had 2 wide receivers, I think it was. And that was something that we talked about off air a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was like a week ago, where I felt like that type of play would really help out Michigan in the red zone. Typically for a team that has those struggles, Cade seems to really navigate well in an empty backfield for some reason. Yes. I don't know why. Yep.
So well, I think it's what he did in high school.
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense then.
He was very high school. He was very, I think they were kind of like an air raid offense. He holds the record for most passing yards in Nevada high school football history. So that's what he was running in high school when he was putting up crazy numbers. So that might be just what he's most comfortable in.
Yeah, if we can get Cade in positions to succeed by doing what's more comfortable for him, because he's not the type of guy like JJ where he can go off platform and make plays himself. He's a guy that's built to be in a structured offense, and something, like those play action plays where he's on the move or he's in an empty backfield. It's more comfortable for him, it seems like, just from what I've seen so far this year. And so I think to fix those red zone issues is you can run the ball all you want, but the other teams know what you're going to be doing is running the ball primarily. So getting Cade on the move or putting him in an empty backfield, getting those tight ends out on those little out routes, or like you said, on that little waggle, or just anything to get those tight ends more involved and cutting across the field or just attacking the middle of the field is going to be a lot more important. Mm-hmm. Talk about what you saw from Michigan's defense against this Indiana offense. Now, albeit Indiana's offensive line is really bad. They had a freshman quarterback in there, and you could tell he was a freshman quarterback, but they had a really good performance. I know we saw a lot of people complain about every time that they got a first down or McCauley was running for a first down. It just seemed like, defense is bad. McDonald's getting exposed. And I'm just like, they held them to under 200 yards total offense. So talk about what you saw from Michigan's defense, and especially those edges in Ojabo and Hutchinson. Good Lord. What was that?
Yeah, I thought the defense was really great. maybe the best performance of the year, up there with
Yes.
the Northwestern game, which the one play in the Northwestern game stands out, but that was literally all the offense they had that day.
And Western Michigan.
Yeah, and Western, who does have a pretty good offense. Yeah, Indiana's really beat up. Like you said, the offensive line isn't good. They're on their third string quarterback. The running back Carr, who's a nice
He was
player,
out. Yep.
yeah, went out early in this game. Ty Freifogel has just not been as effective this year. Although, I mean, he's still a good player, and Hendershot is a good tight end. But the defense, no matter Indiana's woes on offense, the defense, to hold a Division I college football offense to under 200 yards and under 3.5 yards per play, in November and in Power 5 conferences, it's a great performance. So they had one drive that they were able to matriculate down the field and put in the end zone, and then that was it. So it starts up front, as you mentioned, with the ends, Hutchinson and Ajabo, but I also thought Mazzie Smith had a great game. And then we got to see the first real extended run we've seen from Mike Barrett all year.
He looked good.
He looks good. He
Yeah.
can still run. He was quarterback in high school, kind of run and shoot quarterback in high school. So he can still really run, good athlete. And it's funny because his role Saturday to keep the same unit on the field, because basically the goal, this game plan we saw, McDonald's goal was to address the tempo issues and substitution issues that Michigan State presented us with, and that came up in that game. So we put this unit out there to lock one unit on the field and not have to sub, and Mike Barrett is kind of the new piece that allows us to do that, and he's playing essentially the Viper role that Don Brown had, and and our nickel is essentially a 4-2-5. So good news for all Michigan fans. Everyone will be happy about it. Don Brown's defense is back. That's a joke, by the way. We're playing much different coverages, but we are kind of running a 4-2-5 with like a hybrid linebacker now with Mike Barrett, or we did this weekend. We'll see if that stays the plan against Penn State. But I just thought it was interesting. I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was a great performance.
I don't know if I want that to be the scheme this weekend against Penn State. We'll get into that a little bit later. But we do have a very special guest on right now. Matt has joined us.
What's up?
After a little hiccup there. Not sure what he was doing, but Matt, what's up, man?
Nothing. Just got home a few minutes ago. Turn on the game. Turn on the pod. I'm ready to roll. I'm about as excited as I've been all year for this game. So looking forward to talking about it. And sounds like you guys have already taken care of Indiana. So
yeah, let's segue right into Penn State. And Matt, we're going to start with you. We were just talking about Michigan's defense against Indiana and how well that they performed against them. So let's talk about Michigan's defense and what they need to do against Penn State. This is a Penn State offense that is struggling this year. They have some really good wide receivers. I know we talked off air about their tight ends and how I'm not going to say I'm not concerned about them, but they've definitely been underwhelming this year. I know that you guys are still pretty, I don't want to say scared, but concerned about their tight ends and what they could do. And they got a running game that's pretty much non-existent. So talk about what Michigan needs to do against this Penn State offense to, keep it going.
Yeah, so I heard Contown breaking down a little bit kind of the unique defense that they ran, Don Brown-esque last week. I don't think that will carry over into this week just because of style of play for Penn State. They're very heavy 11 personnel. They do run quite a bit of 12, as you mentioned. Their tight ends statistically have underperformed. The 4 games, I believe I watched them 4 times this year. watching those guys move, scared would have been a fine term. That probably would have been underplaying it for me. I'm completely horrified of their tight ends.
They're athletic.
They're very athletic. Theo Johnson, obviously a big fan of his coming out of high school. Brenton Strange, he can run, and Ty Warren does a little bit of wildcat quarterback, and he looks athletic as all get out too. So, typically with Penn State, we've mentioned a little off air that it's kind of their skill guys, their running backs, receivers now, so their tight ends are deep as well. Their offensive line typically seems to struggle quite a bit, and I do think that's been the cause of a lot of their issues this year. So I think for Michigan's, I think they'll be back to their kind of traditional 4-2-5 nickel with Dax in the nickel and the two safeties deep. I'm not sure if last week was injury related with Moten, but I don't think Michael Barrett is a great matchup against these guys.
I don't think so either.
I think they should be able to contain the run with their, I'll call it more their pass nickel with Dax and the two safeties rather than Barrett, Dax, and Hawkins. One thing that I'm definitely going to be watching, and I've been scared of it since Michigan State, and supposedly it's why they did the Barrett package last week. Penn State will tempo Michigan to death if they're not ready for it. They snap the ball above 30 seconds frequently. And they get it they don't come to the line with the most complicated scheme, but they're just trying to beat you by having you out of position. So it's going to be a challenge despite where their offense is ranked. I think it's going to be a challenge for Michigan. I think there are a few matchups that they can really exploit. Michigan's defense against their offense, but overall, they've got some good players. Run game's down a little bit, but the passing options absolutely horrify me. So, it's going to be a big test, and I think they'll be up to it. But it'll be interesting to see what the game plan is, especially with a kind of a unique one last week.
Yeah. So, talking about some of those guys on Michigan's defense against Michigan or Penn State's offense, especially their wide receivers and tight ends. Who would you put on their tight ends? Like, would you put Hawkins on the tight end? Would you put one of the linebackers on the tight ends?
Traditionally, with Notre Dame a few years ago, Michigan had, and Washington this year. I don't really remember Wisconsin, how they handled it. But when it came down to kind of a man coverage situation, it was Hawkins that went with the tight end frequently.
Gotcha. I think it was Hawkins against Wisconsin as well.
I think so, but I'm just not certain of that one.
And
I think with
Dax had the hit that knocked Ferguson out of the Wisconsin game, but I also know Dax was in coverage on DK on the touchdown, so I don't think Dax wasn't like on Ferguson all day. So
they
don't mostly Hawkins.
They don't do a lot of chasing, like what I want to say,
right?
Where they match a receiver as much. Maybe they would with a specific, maybe like a Dotson with Dax.
Yeah.
But so far this year, they have not done that. And I don't think you can afford to try to use a Dax against their tight ends because of the quality of their receivers. I think, the corners plus Dax will have to match their receivers, and then Hawkins becomes kind of your best option, I think, against the tight ends.
Yeah. I mean, who do you put on Dotson? I feel like Gray's been outstanding this year. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's a little slow for Dotson. Dotson's a pretty good runner.
This is going to be the biggest challenge so far,
right? Yeah. I mean, I would love to say you could put Turner on him, but Turner can get grabby at times. So, man, I don't know. It's tough because you put Dax on him, but Dax has been up and down when it comes to giving up big plays.
I mean, this is kind of a trial run for Ohio State, right?
Yep.
They've got a good wide receiver core with a star. It's not Ohio State's wide receiver group, but
right.
If you don't have a plan to stop this Penn State passing attack, then you probably don't have a plan to stop Ohio State. So I think they've got a plan. Whether that's just sitting in zone and banking on Hutch and Ojabo to get home most of the time, and being able to snuff out the screen game. Penn State loves those quick screens.
Yes,
those little now screens out wide. They're going to have wide receivers, spitting on the sideline. So I kind of think it's going to be a heavy zone game, and my plan of attack would be to keep obviously Dotson, but just keep everything in front of you and make Penn State, who's been really inefficient on offense, go on 9-10 play drives to score touchdowns.
Right.
Which is what we said against Michigan State, but for their run game more so. So see if you can execute that this week.
Yeah, Penn State's got a really good group of receivers. Not only do they have Dotson, but they got Parker Washington. They've got the what's the other guy's name? He's got like 2 last names, I'm pretty sure.
Lambert Smith.
Yeah.
Lambert Smith, yeah, he's really solid too. I really like everybody that they've got on offense skill wise. In terms of Penn State's running game, Noah Cain struggled a lot this year, but Sean Clifford, we all know years past, he can run. He can run with the ball, especially if the pocket breaks down. He can kind of sneak out and just, gash you for about 10, 15, sometimes 20 yards. That's obviously going to be a concern for Michigan, but is that something Michigan should hone in on a ton, like having a spy for Clifford, or how would you guys defend Clifford and his running ability?
I would probably come with the same plan of attack as you did against Indiana in terms of what your inside linebackers are doing. If you're zone across the board, then you're going to have eyes on the quarterback. And I don't think Clifford is so electric that, if you're like curl depth zone players couldn't break on him and make a tackle, guys like Josh Ross and Junior Colson. But I also think that, Michigan is going to get pressure with 4 on this offensive line. And Michigan's ends are so athletic that, they're going to collapse the pocket. And I think it'll be hard for Clifford to escape on true dropbacks. The thing, and I haven't watched a ton of Penn State this year, but the thing that they loved to do with Clifford last year was kind of give him the option. Like they will have an RPO where it's a quarterback design run in that it's like a gap scheme or like a split zone, almost look for a quarterback draw. And then they're optioning a linebacker with a route as well. And the Indiana run that set up the touchdown, I think 2 plays before the touchdown, the quarterback run with McCulley or whatever the kid's name is,
McCulley,
was basically this play that Penn State would run with Clifford last year. So this could all be wasted air. I don't know if it's still in the playbook under Yursich, but
it's from Oklahoma, so I would guess so.
Okay. Yeah. So
Oklahoma does it all the time.
Yeah. So it is then. So yeah, they'll scheme up ways to give Clifford a clear path to run, even when passing is an option. On pure dropbacks, I'm not as worried, given how Michigan should be able to collapse the pocket against this offensive line.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. With the plan of attack that you mentioned, which I agree with also in terms of like the zone and keeping everything in front. I don't think Clifford is spy worthy. So, he could get you a couple times a game. He's definitely athletic enough to move. But, if you're playing a lot of zone to keep the passing game as a whole, in front of you, it's going to be fine. He may get a first down here and there on you, but they should be able to come up and tackle. And I agree also, Con, with what you said on the edge. I think Michigan has a very distinct advantage there that they can take advantage of. And I think your kind of philosophy on how to stop them is right. It's going to be kind of more of a conservative zone look, keep everything in front, and limit the big play and try to make them be efficient. I think you were spot on with it.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how Michigan attacks him on defense. Let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball. Matt, we were talking about earlier before you came on to the show. We were talking about Michigan's red zone struggles this year and how Michigan's, I guess you could say, offensive struggles this past Saturday against Indiana weren't really necessarily struggles. Me and Contown were talking about how well that Gaddis has been drawing up plays, and I feel like, this past Saturday he put Cade and just Michigan's offense in general better position to succeed in the red zone. Contown was talking about what were you saying? The waggle or the wiggle play? I'm under 60. I'm under 68, so I'm not aware of these plays that you were talking about. And then I was talking about that little out route that Schoonmaker ran on the last touchdown that Michigan had. Kind of talk about Michigan's offense and what they should be doing going forward, especially in this game in the red zone, to succeed, because they've left a ton of points on the field. We saw that against Michigan State. We've seen that throughout the whole year, but we saw that heavily against Michigan State. And we saw it this past Saturday against Indiana, where they settled for, I think it was 2 or 3 field goals. They should have won the game like 42-7.
Yeah, I think so. Mike Hart had kind of a question about the red zone offense today, and I think he answered it right. I think it varies. I don't think it's any one thing. I don't think it's play calling. Sometimes it certainly is. Sometimes it's execution. It needs to be more consistent down, especially in the red area. And that is just going to be 2 of the next 3 games, really. Penn State and Ohio State, you're not going, just like against Michigan State, you're not going to beat them with field goals. The execution has to be better down there. I'm not sure that I agree with it's Sam Webb that's saying it a lot, but the JJ package, my theory is that the quarterback has to be able to run, or he has to be a surgeon for the red zone offense to be highly efficient.
True. I didn't see that.
Yeah, he is in favor of giving JJ more snaps in the red zone, which at this point, I just feel it's got to be Cade. I've kind of went back and forth on the quarterback situation. I just think overall, offensively, it'll be interesting to see this game in general. Penn State has a very good back 7. Very good. Probably the best we'll see, including Ohio State.
Yes.
And they have a couple good pass rushers as well. This game, I really think, is going to come down to styles make fights type of thing. I think I can't get the Illinois game for Penn State out of my head. They
would love another one of those.
They ran for 350 on them, and I realized 343. That's the worst performance, of the year. So, that's not the only result that matters. But I just think, right. I think they're going to attack. Michigan will attack offensively on the ground game. I could see a similar strategy to Washington, maybe not as run heavy. But Michigan is so different stylistically than Penn State, both on offense and on defense. That it will be interesting to see how this game kind of plays out. I think they're going to attack on the ground a lot, but that kind of depends on the running backs too. I mean, is it just Hassan? Is it Hassan and Donovan? How many guys are healthy?
Hassan and Donovan. I don't think Corum comes back to Ohio State.
Yeah, that scares me a little bit if that's going to be the preferred plan of attack, and we're not
I
all
agree.
that deep. I get accused of being a Penn State hater sometimes, and I am absolutely not a Penn State hater. I'm a James Franklin hater.
I hate Penn State and James Franklin. I don't give a damn who hears it.
And I am a big fan of a lot of their players. I think they have, especially on defense, they've got some studs on the back end, and the transfer they got from Temple, I won't even try with his name, but him is an excellent pass rusher.
He's really good.
Yeah, they.
I don't know about his run defense. Is his run defense good?
I don't think their front in general is great.
Is good. So he's more Ojabo than Hutchinson.
Correct.
I would say it's maybe not such a drop off as like I think Ojabo has. I think that like Ojabo to me is still very much like a specialist.
He's extremely raw.
Ebiketie, however you say correctly pronounce his last name, he's fine against the run. Like he's an every down guy.
He's serviceable,
but he's definitely his main
pass rush is where he
attribute
is
his
bread and butter.
Their interior defensive line is terrible.
Tangelo's not good.
Tangelo's bad. He's like very mediocre. And then it's a huge drop off with like Devon Ellies is the next guy up generally now that Mustafer's out. Mustafer was very good.
Mustafer was excellent.
The reason for this is PJ Mustafer is out for the year. He was a very, very good defensive tackle. It's a huge loss. They weren't amazing against the run with Mustafer in, but he was
without
kind of like
pretty terrible.
Yeah. So
I kind of wonder if this is a game where inside zone's gonna work a lot where it hasn't in games past.
It should certainly be a game where we see push and the interior. I think in recent weeks there have been situations where Michigan just needs 2 yards, 1 yard, and at times didn't get the push they needed. This is a matchup that Keegan and Bastardis and Zinter have to win on a down-to-down basis for Michigan's offense to have sustained success in this one.
This will be a short leash game for Keegan, I think. I think if Keegan can't get any push up front, then they're going to mix in Barnhart and Filiaga or whoever else.
I do think this is a game. I love their linebackers, but more so I love their athleticism than I love their skill. I do think this is a game that I'm trying to think of a good example of 2015-16 Michigan, like when they were still I form consistently. I mean, even Penn State in 16, they just confused and played games with the linebackers all game long. I do think they can be had a little bit in the run game, the linebackers. So I think they'll be a little bit creative with the run schemes. Which
get creative in the passing game with the tight ends too. All's going to be back, and Schumacher, he looks good, man. I like Schumacher. He's come on as of late.
Yeah, I was just looking. Ohio State went for about 160, 4.7 per. Illinois was the first game without Mustafer, and we already mentioned their total. I'm looking for their yards per carry. 5.3.
Are you talking about on the ground?
Yeah.
Henderson came on late in that game.
Yeah, Illinois actually gained 391 yards rushing. Their net was 357.
Okay, gotcha.
That's insane. They were 5.3. So
Peters had like 60 yards passing.
Yeah. Their passing net was 38 yards.
Oh, God.
And they won.
Yeah, they did win.
8 for 21. They were completing like 35% of their passes.
Took them 9 overtimes to do it, but they won.
Wisconsin ran for 180
before they had a run game.
Right.
Before they had a run game. Right. Yeah. That was the same Wisconsin.
Right. And that includes 2 sacks as well. So it's probably more like 190.
So they can be had in the run game.
Yes.
Like if Michigan's not successful in the run game, they're not going to win this game at all.
No.
I would agree.
Oh, Jesus. Makes me even more nervous.
It's going to be big to get one of Edwards or Corum back, and I think we all think the more likely one is probably Edwards. But to get one of them back, we all love Hassan Haskins. He's a great player. Penn State, I don't think it's not a game.
40 carries.
Not the way he can't carry the load like he did against Indiana. He needs someone else. So could be a good game for Edwards to break out if he's back.
Auburn went 195. Net 182. I mean, Auburn, Wisconsin, those were both when Mustapher was still there. The only one I really haven't looked at is Iowa. I mean,
the 2 Penn State games I've watched the most of this year were the Auburn and the Ohio State game, and I did watch the Auburn game from about kick to finish, and I was just thinking the whole game, like Michigan is gonna run really well against Penn State. Tank Bigsby is a great running back, but Michigan's offensive line is much better than Auburn's offensive line.
Auburn's, yep. I tend to agree with that as well. Maybe the left side of the offensive line played really well against Indiana this past weekend. A lot of those stretch zone plays that they ran with Haskins where he broke out for like 20 plus yards were really nice. I would like to see more of that this weekend as well.
It'd be interesting to see if that kind of scheme stays, because that scheme really benefits Hayes and Vistardis. So, we really hadn't seen it much at all prior to the Indiana game, and they have this offensive line is just good. They have pieces to do both. I mean, I wouldn't really consider Zinner or Keegan like stretch zone guys, but they're capable of doing it.
Right. And a lot of the stuff that they were asking for starters to do, he's not athletic enough to do it. A lot of the pull arounds and stuff, I kind of wonder if Cesar Ruiz was in this offense, how he would perform as opposed to Vistardis.
See, I think Vistardis is fine athletically. I think it's more of when they're asking him to move bodies like in stationary. I think that's where he really struggled against Michigan State when he was stationary there, like because the stretch, you're not pulling, but you have to be he reached out to like a 3 tech or farther out against Indiana. And I understand it's Indiana, but I mean, that requires a lot of athleticism to get out there and do that. Yeah. I think it's more of a strength deal for Vistardis than athleticism. I don't think he's a great athlete, but I think that's kind of leans more towards intelligence and athleticism are bigger strengths than true like brute power.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is why it's good to have Matt on the show, because he's so smart when it comes to like schematics and how shit works, how us dumb people don't understand football as well. He's as Matt does.
Well, you are right. He's not Cesar Ruiz athletic, but Cesar Ruiz is, barely played guard at Michigan and pretty much immediately started at guard in the NFL. So, Cesar Ruiz is, there's not many of him out there.
He's a physical specimen.
Yes. Yeah. David Molk was the what do I want to say? He was name. He was like the picture hanging above your dresser of like, he's the ideal athlete at center. But Cesar was almost as athletic and 30 pounds heavier.
Molk wasn't the biggest guy, right? He was like 6 feet, like under 300.
Yeah. Like his weight was greatly exaggerated. Like
he was like 5'11", 285.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I saw a picture of Jack Miller this weekend. who is in fantastic shape. But he was supposed to be kind of the next Mulk for Rich Rod.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he is not a big guy. If you saw like Jack Miller next to Caesar, for example, like it would look like Caesar ate Jack Miller.
Yeah, Caesar was like 6'3", I think it was, but like he was like 320, 330, if not more. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah, and Caesar was just as athletic. Like that. Caesar was freaky, man.
Yeah,
I think Jack Miller was my class at Michigan, but I had a few like actual classes with him and was around him a little bit. And yeah, he's not a big guy. Funny guy, like very very nice and a smart guy. But
that's the guy that does
Cesar
the
Ruiz,
reviews, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha. Ruiz is funny too, by the way.
Sat behind me in a poli-sci class and just like the worst distraction. Does not shut up.
This is
Cesar Ruiz is very funny.
I'm not sure the total accuracy of this, but one of my coworkers actually worked with Jack Miller at an insurance agency in Toledo, and I believe Jack Miller is still there. But at the time, Jack Miller was doing a lot with like, the guys that come back as seniors, and they get insurance like on their body essentially.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was told by my coworker that Jack probably will, if he listens to this, he's probably like, I don't do that at all. But I'm pretty certain that was what he was working on at the time. Now this has been a few years, so. But yeah, he seems like he, at least from the stories I heard, was very likable and very successful as well.
Nice.
So
that's good.
There you go.
Any last thoughts before we head into our last segment of the pod?
I'm feeling better about this game.
Same.
Guess I was with the Michigan State tempo. Like starting Sunday, I was getting like cold sweats about this game. And
I'm feeling very Wisconsin-y about this game.
I can see that. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what really changed my mind, if I'm just feeling more confident about the run game, but I'm feeling better than I was early in the week. That's for sure. And off season.
Sports is all about matchups, man. And like Michigan on offense, what do they do best? Is run the football. Penn State's weakness is what? Run defense.
Yep.
Then on defense, Penn State's offense is still not that good. Still, like, obviously their running game has been really bad this year, but advanced metrics are still not that great passing the ball. It's like, they've got three great wide receivers. Dotson's obviously the best one. They've got a solid one in Parker Washington, the guy with the two last names. Forgot his name again, Lambert Smith or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think Michigan's pass defense against their passing offense is better matchup wise than their run defense against our run offense. That's just how I look at it.
Limit the big plays. God,
really keep everything in front of you.
It's easier said than done.
You over the top. Dotson will beat you over the top. That is the biggest thing right there. But Michigan's done a really good job limiting the big plays. They did that against Michigan State as well. The only big play that they gave up was the Kenneth Walker touchdown run. And obviously, like, they gave up that, what was it, like a 20, 30-yard pass to Naylor or whoever it was that snuck out from the backfield or something like that on the fourth down. But they've done a really good job of limiting the big plays this year.
I'll stick to my metric of 6 big plays, 20 plus runs, 25 plus yard passes. If they're under 6, Michigan wins. If they're over 6, Michigan's in deep, deep doo-doo.
Yeah. Penn State's ran those big plays against them in years past, especially with KJ Hamler.
Yes. This feels so similar to the was it the 19 matchup that was at Penn State?
Yes. Yep.
It feels so similar to that.
I've been thinking of the 2019 game all week.
Yeah. The only difference is they don't have the run game.
Yeah.
Like 2019, they had a better run game, in my opinion. And not to mention Michigan's defense, especially, schematically, is better suited than it was in 2019. It's kind of like leave everybody on an island and hope for the best. Obviously, that one touchdown pass that Metellus gave up he was still receiving signals, I'm pretty sure, from the sideline. He was just looking over there, and Penn State snapped the ball.
Yeah, and they're running past them. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Yeah. Content, what about you?
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add here. Penn State's got a good punter.
They do have a good punter. We do as well.
It'll be interesting to see if our punt returner is healthy, and if it's not AJ Henning, who is receiving punts for Michigan against this good punter.
He looks more comfortable back there than AJ Henning.
I'm less comfortable in the sense that I think every time you have to replace someone, the likelihood that they're going to succeed is lower. And the other thing that is factors into the special teams conversation and the game analysis at large is it's now looking like it will rain on Saturday.
You said it's not?
No, it now looks like it will rain.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was previously, I looked, it said only Friday, kind of like the Michigan State game looked like Friday showers, nothing on Saturday. Now it is showing rain on Saturday. So.
Why does that make me feel better?
Michigan is the better running team, and run defense is Penn State's weakness. So
should that make me feel better? Is that am I accurate in that?
Yeah, I think so. But their run game sometimes Penn State's passing game can sometimes like transition. Contown mentioned the right now screen type thing. They can move into kind of a dip and dunk type pass offense if they need to. And they kind of do it sometimes naturally anyway. So yes, overall, anytime one team's better at passing and one's better at running, the weather or bad weather would favor the run team. But
one thing I forgot to go over is Jamal Green's injury and how this is going to affect Michigan's pass defense. So that leaves us with Turner, Gray, and who is it? Burrow? Is he going to be the next guy off the bench?
I think the guy that played more on Saturday due to injuries was Rod Moore, and then you can move Dax around as needed. Yeah, and you should see. I would assume Moten plays more against Penn State, and then
I forgot about Jamon's injury.
I'm wondering if that's injury. If Moten was injured, because it seemed like they played a lot of guys over Moten, and not necessarily, not specifically over him, but just kind of.
It
seemed like place of them.
Dax played more deep safety,
right? But what I'm saying is, if they played Barrett,
really good doing it too.
if they played Barrett more and Rod Moore played, and I'm wondering if Moten was hurt because it seemed like they had a bunch of adjustments.
Yeah, I think they were. I agree. I think I said Dax was playing back there because of injury. Yeah, but to answer your question, Ronnie, I think they have ways to shift guys around. They like the skill sets of Dax and guys like Rod Moore enough that I don't think you necessarily go to the next corner available. If I'm sure McBurrows will travel, but probably the next D-back in will be Rod Moore, and then you figure it out who's playing what spot from there.
Yeah,
I think don't get me wrong. I like McBurrows and what he's brought to the table so far, but he is a true freshman.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the reason I'm expecting a little bit more of their traditional nickel with, a Turner and Gray on the outside with Dax in the slot and Moten and Hawkins back at safety. That's part of it, is like Green being hurt. And I agree with Contown more. There's some different options. I would have said earlier in the year, maybe George Johnson, but we haven't really seen him.
It's like he's disappeared off the face of the earth.
He's still on the special teams that I've noticed, but
oh, really?
He just doesn't. I haven't seen him contributing really at all, other than garbage time on defense.
Poor Andre Seldon, honestly, because I loved him coming out of high school. Man, he just can't. I don't know. It sucks.
Yeah, I just wonder. Like, two different staffs have went, adjusted personnel on the field rather than bring in Iman Dennis, Seldon, or Darian Green Warren. And then plus you add in the McBurrows playing a little bit ahead. I just wonder if those guys are just pretty far behind.
Well, no offense to Green Warren, but I didn't really like him. Seems to be a bit slow in his 40 time. Even proved that. I'm pretty sure he ran closer to a 4.7 than a 4.6. So that was coming out of high school. So I wasn't a fan to begin with. So he was a great run defender, but that was really it.
Most of his huddle film was run defense, and
yeah, exactly. Great run defender.
It's kind of like might be a red flag for a high school corner.
Yeah. I don't think he's a corner long term. I think he's more of like, box safety. Seems like that would be his best fit. If he's such a great run defender, he's actually got good size, and he runs a lot slower than what you want a cornerback to be. So he runs Tease Tabor slow.
Yeah, they're talking about the fact that Aiden Hutchinson could potentially run in the 4.7s at the combine. So
right. So if you're running the same speed as a 6'6", 270 guy and you're 6'1", 190, it's an issue.
Yes.
That this is very tangential, but that Feldman piece at the beginning of the year had Aiden at like 4.62 or something. And I never know where Feldman gets his numbers. I'm sure they come from staffs because those types of pieces make your kid look good. But
I will say that Michigan's numbers historically, since Harbaugh's been there, have been pretty close to accurate. There's been a few inflated ones. I mean, they reported DJ Turner, I believe, in the 4.3s and
4.38.
Yeah, there's been a few inflated ones for sure, but we're not talking the one Ohio State 40 board where they had two guys in the 4.2s and like 6 players that were in the 4.3s. Like, Michigan historically has. Quiddy, I'm pretty sure his agility drill that everyone like oohed and awed.
Quiddy ran it even faster, I thought.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say at the combine. He had an absurd time, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that's not real," and then he ran faster.
Right.
So
Harbaugh's not the one to like misconstrue stuff. Like he's very like to the point about a lot of that kind of stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that when he puts out numbers, testing numbers, it's for real.
Nico ran the exact same time at his pro day as they put out. Like I think the summer before the 2020 year, like right before he opted out, like Gaddis or someone posted he ran like a 4.42 in Glick. And then sure enough, pro day shows up, laser time 4.42, doing well with the Texans now.
It's funny that we're talking about this because Penn State also has been pretty honest for the most part. But the one
when
thing
they put out Oweh's number,
I
thought that shit was fake.
Yeah, Penn State has in general has prioritized athleticism, and then they talk a lot about the athleticism that they test throughout the guy's career, and then it usually holds pretty accurately come combine or pro days or things like that. So it's funny that we're talking about testing numbers, and that's one of the things that like these two programs like have a lot in common. Michigan doesn't prioritize it as much in recruiting, I don't think, but I think they prioritize football players a little bit more than
Absolutely.
true freak athletes, but they still chase some of those too. There's no doubt. So,
yeah. So let's go ahead and move on to our final segment of the podcast. And it's honestly my favorite one every week because I love making predictions and doing these over-unders. And these over-unders are brought to you by our sponsor, Prize Picks. If you use promo code HAILUM, you get a match, 100% match of your first deposit of up to $100. That's promo code HAILUM. So let's go over some of the Prize Picks props that they've got for this week. And they've got them out earlier than usual for this week. So let's go ahead and start with the passing yards on Michigan. Cade McNamara, they've got him at 167.5. Over or under? Matt, we'll start with you.
oh, over. He's been playing pretty well, I think. So I'll say over.
Contown.
I'm going to say over as well. I think it's going to be pretty close to that number, especially if it's wet.
Well.
This is obviously, like we talked about, it's a tough secondary. We don't know who's healthy for Michigan, and there's going to be some rain in the forecast. But I just think if it's under that number, unless it's a exact replica of the Illinois game, Michigan probably really didn't execute how they wanted to. So I'll go over. I don't think it's going to be a big passing game, but I think it'll be over 167.5.
Go over. Agree with everything you said, Contown. I don't think he'll go over by much, but I think he'll go over that 167.5 mark. I think this will be a heavy running game. So over for Cade. Let's go over under for Sean Clifford. They've got him at 194.5. Matt, we'll start with you.
Oh, I'll say over. I think they're going to get, say 300 plus yards, and I don't think they're going to have a 100-yard rusher. So I don't think it'll be a ton of huge plays. I think they'll tempo us into some, so I'll say over.
What about you, Contown?
Agreed. Over. I don't think holding Clifford under 200 yards passing is too realistic, given their offense and their weapons and just how they want to play the game. I think if Michigan does hold Clifford under 200 yards, then Michigan has won the game. I think it's a more realistic goal to hold him under 300, or even, a really good day would be under 250. And then you completely shut down the run game and try to get it done on your end on offense. So I'll go over. I think, it'll be a decent game for Clifford.
Yeah, I'll go over. Same reasons as both of you guys said. That's what their offense is based upon. So I'll go over. Let's go to the rushing yards and start with Hassan Haskins. I think it's a pretty low number here, 77.5 rushing yards.
Over.
Over. Yeah.
Hit
the over on this one, right?
Yes.
Even if it's a volume over, it's over.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if this line was set without factoring in.
They don't have any other. They don't have Corum or Edwards. It's just Haskins and McNamara. But I'm not going to do McNamara's because nobody's going to do 0.5 yards. So
yeah, I do think with the receivers kind of banged up too, I think that pushes Michigan even more. I think they would have done it just seeing the matchup, but it pushes them even more towards the run game. I mean,
77.5 seems low.
Yeah.
For this game and regarding all the circumstances. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and pick that right there.
I was going to say, I'm about to be Venmoing you guys some after this podcast.
Let's go ahead and get those in as well. Let's go with Noah Cain, 34.5 rushing yards. Matt?
I don't think their run game's good, but that's really low.
That is extremely low.
Over, I guess. Just
they're
going to have 50 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, wait till I give you the next over under. But yeah, Contown.
I mean, yeah, same thing. I don't.
It's like it could be under, but it's like you have to go over because there's no fucking way that they go under 34 and a half yards. No,
has he missed any time, any games
I don't
this year?
think so.
So he's only averaging
like 3.3 yards or something to carry.
He's averaging 32 and a half yards a game.
A game. Wow.
What
is it per carry?
3.2.
3.2. Gotcha.
Yeah, so he's getting about 10 or 11 carries a game, about 11.
Jesus,
I'll go over just because it's so low, but it's not like far off from his average per game this year.
Big 12. Mike Yurchich.
It's so weird. We said this a little in the off season, but it's so weird, like this marriage of like this air raid Big 12 guy in Yurcich and the roster they had built like completely out of tight ends and running backs for Kurt Sriracha's like Minnesota RPO run, more run heavy offense. It's like this is a very weird transition year for what they want to do on offense.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna go over, but I think he has like maybe 36, 37 yards. I'm gonna go over, but like barely. Let's go with Sean Clifford, 4.5 rushing yards. Matt.
Does this count sacks? I hate quarterback rushing yards.
It has to count
the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, in just like yards gained, definitely over. Net under. I think he's gonna get sacked a few times. So yeah, net under, I guess. So under.
Net under. There's no such thing as net under. It's over 100 rushing yards.
Oh, I don't know how they're calculating it. So
yeah, so it's just pure rushing yards, whether it's like net or just whatever. Like it's they count everything. So if you get sacked, then that counts.
So it's net. So under. Okay.
Yes, whatever that means. I'm not well versed in the football world that much.
I'm gonna go over. I think he's gonna get sacked, but I don't think they're gonna be like devastating 9-15 yard sacks. You know, like he'll get sacked like if he get bottled up in the pocket, or like he'll try to escape and get dropped like a yard behind the line of scrimmage, and he'll have enough like actual run plays where he put him over that like 4.5 mark. You said, yeah. I mean, he'll have he'll probably have 10 net yards rushing, I would guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over. I think he's gonna break one for like 15, maybe 20 yards, but then that's it. I think that'll be the extent of his running for the day. I think Michigan does a better job against mobile QBs than they have in the past, so I'm gonna go over on that.
See, I almost agree with that exactly, Ronnie. But then I think he's gonna be sacked 3 times for 5 yards, and that would put him under.
It's true.
He's averaging 13.5 yards per game rushing, sacks included.
Really? I didn't know it was that low.
Yeah, he's only at 122 yards on the season. I don't know off the top of my head how many times he's been sacked, but that's pretty low.
It's going to be more on Saturday, whatever the number is.
Yes. So let's get into the score predictions here. Matt, we're going to start with you with your score prediction.
So I just saw on the 24/7 board that the line went, some places it opened at Michigan +1, and now it's Michigan -1.5. Caesars Sportsbook says that Michigan opened as -1. So kind of depends on where you get your odds, but now Michigan is 1.5 point favorite. So the line is moving in Michigan's favor, whether it started at +1 or -1. I think Penn State's going to get a few touchdowns, and I'm kind of back and forth between two numbers. I'm pretty set on 31 for Michigan. I'll say I'll go 31-24.
31-24 Michigan.
Correct. 31-24 Michigan.
Okay. So Ronnie said earlier that he's feeling like very Wisconsin about this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I am too. But like how I actually felt going into our game with Wisconsin, this is not like your 2017, Joe Moorhead, Saquon Barkley, Penn State team. The offense is very inefficient, but they still have the ability to hit, splash plays. Jahan Dotson is obviously having a very special season. We talked about the tight ends, even though their numbers aren't crazy. They're very large, athletic freaks.
Yeah.
Penn State talent-wise is like right there with Michigan. I think they're like 14th and 15th or 15th and 16th in the composite. Penn State's one spot behind Michigan. And then on defense, they're like a really good defense. I certainly think the second best defense Michigan will play this year.
I agree.
And it's in a venue that Michigan doesn't win in a ton. We've seen wins more recently than we had in Madison coming into this year, but for me, it's one of those games where I think Michigan has a roadmap to victory. There's a large mismatch in terms of Michigan's strength on offense and Penn State's weakness on defense in the run game. And I don't think that Michigan's secondary is weak to the point where, Jahan Dotson and the passing attack of Penn State becomes a glaring mismatch. So I do think it's going to be a close game that Michigan has a very good chance of winning. I can't really pick Michigan to win this game right now based on what I saw against Michigan State on defense and the issues that tempo gave us, and the explosiveness that I know the Penn State receivers have, especially Jahan Dotson. We talked about going into the Michigan State game. All you had to do to stop that offense, which is ranked right around Michigan State's, right around 50th in SP Plus, is make them go on long drives and prevent the splash plays, the home run shots. And Michigan couldn't do that. So, I guess until I see it, I'm going to assume it'll happen again, and Penn State will find just enough ways to get in the end zone and hit those big plays this weekend. I'm going to go 28-23 Penn State. I picked Michigan to win this game preseason, and I picked Michigan to lose the Wisconsin game preseason. But I've kind of flipped on these two teams, and I could certainly see Michigan winning this game. It's going to be on the back of Hassan Haskins and the defense if they do. But sitting here on Wednesday, I think I just feels like a game that's going to be close. But Penn State being at home and will hit enough explosive plays to win.
Yeah, the tempo issues are terrifying. And if this was a night game, there is no way I would pick Michigan. No way.
No. Right. That's a big factor for me too. That's disappointing.
I think the rain is interesting because I don't know that it doesn't help Michigan. I don't think that it's raining, but I do think it negatively affects Penn State's passing offense because most of the passing offense, if the rain is like really thick, will be those like now screens and short stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I do trust Michigan's secondary, especially Dax, out on if Dax is on the same side as Jahan Dotson, to erase a lot of that stuff. It's kind of like, the intermediate stuff over the middle that they want to catch it at 15 and run for 35 or run for a touchdown that Penn State builds drives out of. So the weather is, it is an important factor as it relates to Penn State's offense.
Yeah, before the season, I picked this game to be a win for Michigan. Surprisingly enough, I picked Wisconsin and Ohio State to be the only two losses for Michigan this year, and I'm gonna stick with my 10-2 guns and pick Michigan to beat Penn State 30-17. I really love Michigan's run game. I love what they should be able to do, hypothetically speaking, against this Penn State's run defense that just, to me, is weak, to say the least. I think Michigan could do just enough on offense, similar to what they did against Wisconsin, where they could, Wisconsin was so honed in on the run that they could hit like a couple of big plays here and there, especially on play action. I think they can do the same thing in the passing game against Penn State. Obviously, Penn State's pass defense is better than Wisconsin's. So I'm confident that they can make enough plays in the passing game and just pound them in the running game and be on their way to a 30-17 win against Penn State. So that is my pick, and that does it for this episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Harder. Today, I was joined by my two gracious co-hosts, Contown and Matt. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you find your podcast. Be sure to rate us, review us, download this podcast, do whatever you want. Give us a listen. And as always, go Blue.